Hey everybody, welcome back. Thanks for tuning in as always. We're getting back to the Farmall M here. In the last video, it was running. It was not running like it should. It was kind of hesitating on acceleration. It was missing a little bit. We had that strange noise coming from the top end rear of the engine that I couldn't identify for certain. And we found a little bit of coolant / water in the oil. So it's kind of a confusing situation, and I just want to thank everybody for all the good comments and suggestions. There was a lot of good information that I was able to take from that. I had mistakenly read that the point gap was 13 thousandths. I even looked in the manual, but what that was, it was supposed to be 13 thousandths gap for magneto points, and distributor points are supposed to be 20 thousandths. So I've already made that change. I haven't started the tractor yet up. I want to wait for you guys to hear it with me. Now, if the points are set too narrow, too close together like they were, they actually can cause things like pre-ignition and intermittent misfires and stumbling, just like the tractor was doing. So wouldn't that be something if all the running issues were due to the point gap? I kind of doubt it, but we're going to find out real quick. The other thing I took from the comments that is easy to check is the manifold. Well, evidently this manifold is for liquid propane instead of gasoline, and they are different. The research that I've done says the propane manifolds may not run as well in cold weather conditions, cold starting, cold running, which is exactly what we've been doing because it's been very cold around here in the winter. It's just now starting to warm up. So that was the first thing about the manifold. The second thing was, hey, check the manifold for leaks. Make sure there's no failures in the gaskets, no cracks, no gaps, because if we're sucking in air up there, that's going to cause all kinds of problems. Another thing that people commented on was maybe the distributor shaft is worn and loose in there. And I just checked it again when I was regapping the points, and it feels pretty good to me. There's no side to side, up and down at all. There's just a little bit of rotational movement, but that's normal. So I don't think that's what it is, just based on me feeling the end of the shaft. There's no play at all. The other thing that came up a lot in the comments was the governor. Evidently there's centrifugal weights in the governor, some type of weights in there that can possibly get stuck, and if those are not operating properly, that can also cause running issues. There were also some comments about maybe the bushings on the rocker arm shafts were worn and the rocker arm shafts are moving around, or maybe the valves are just way out of adjustment and we're getting a lot of rattling around there. And if any of those things are occurring, that would contribute to a kind of a strange running engine, just like we have. But for now, we're going to start the tractor, see how it sounds after I change the point gap. And I'm also going to spray some starting fluid up around the intake manifold while it's running, just to see if we can identify any leaks at all. And we'll go from there. The link to my new online store will be posted below the description in this video and all my videos. Right now, we've only got one product there. It's a coffee mug with the Antique Cars and Stuff logo. Turned out really nice. There's two different sizes of this, and I've also got two other products in the works, so those will be coming soon. Any purchase you make at that store will directly help this channel. Thanks. absolutely no change, and there's no leaks in the manifolds. I guess the next thing I'll try, like I said, there's a few comments about these spark plugs. They're Champion brand. I don't know, what the heat rating on them is, but so yeah, let's upgrade the spark plugs and start the engine again, and we'll go from there. All right, it's a little later in the day now. I had to do some other things. Went ahead and replaced the spark plugs. These are the old ones, and you can see 1 and 2 look great. 3 is got a lot of soot on it. 4 used to have a lot of soot on it like this, but now it looks like it's cleaning up a little bit, and I don't know if that's a result of adjusting the gap of the points or just running it more or what, but 4 actually looks pretty good now also. So the only one that's still got a bunch of soot on it is number 3, and I'm not sure what to think about that. But anyway, I've got Autolite 3116s in the tractor right now. We're going to try those and see how that goes, and then if we're still having issues, I'm going to try Autolite 386s next. Well, that was a huge improvement. We are getting still an occasional, just a little bit of a pop here and there, but I think I'm getting overly critical now. These old tractors, do that a little bit. So those Champion D21s were not good. And I wonder, number 3 being all black and the other 3 being clean now, I wonder if we were not getting a good detonation in number 3. That could possibly make a noise up there in the top end like I was hearing. Because I didn't hear that noise anymore at all. That knock or that clank or whatever you want to call it, I didn't hear it at any RPM with these Autolite 3116s. I'm not sure what to think here. You guys want to try the Autolite 386s? Might as well do that just because we're here. I got half of mine just to leave the 3116s in now and take it for a drive. But just to be thorough, let's try the Autolite 386s and see how they do. Now, before I start it, take a look at the 3116s here, that short run we did. This is 1, 2, 3, and 4. So even though it was running much smoother, we've still got different conditions in 3 and 4 than we do in 1 and 2. That's been pretty consistent this whole time. So anyway, let's try running it with the Autolite 386s. We'll see how it runs on those. And it looks to me, based on what we see here, we might need to do a valve adjustment, or at least take the valve cover off and check all the valves and get our eyeballs on that stuff and make sure it's all set properly, because these should all be the same. So let's put the 31/16 back in and try it again. So it's actually running pretty darn good at this point, mostly because of that spark plug change. But it's not perfect. I'm still getting an occasional tiny little miss and pop here and there, like I said before. I took it out in our wet field and the tractor really sank in a few places out there, but she kept on popping forward. No problem at all. So it's running pretty good now, you know, maybe not perfect, but way better than it was before. I could actually live with it the way it is now. So I'm pretty happy about that. And that noise went away on the top end. I cannot explain that except for maybe we are getting improper detonation on number 3, like I said before. Anyway, the next course of action is to let this sit overnight, let everything get good and cold. And we'll do a valve adjustment on it, and we'll also crack the drain plug on the oil pan and see if we get any more water or coolant you know, out the bottom before any oil comes out. So we're definitely going in the right direction, making some good progress on it. I'll see you guys in just a second and we'll get the valves adjusted. Good morning, everybody. It's the next day now. It's a little cold right now, but it's supposed to warm up to 52 degrees I think today, so that should be nice. We're gonna crack this drain plug and see if we get any evidence of water coming out at all. Yep, there's a little bit of water right there. So because we did an oil change on this in the last video, that's too much water to be condensation. For those of you who don't know this already, water is heavier than oil, so it will always settle to the bottom of the oil pan if there is water or coolant in the system. That's why it comes out first when you crack the drain plug. Yeah, it's even got a green tint to it, so unfortunately that is definitely coolant, and it's quite a bit of it, you know, for the little time that we ran it after the oil change in the last video. We should not be getting this in the bottom of the oil pan. The best case scenario we can hope for at this point regarding this problem is a bad head gasket. That is relatively easy and inexpensive to fix, but anything else is going to be a big deal. We could have a crack in the block, we could have a crack in the head. Well, I'm waiting for the rest of the water to drain out of the oil pan. Let's get the hood off. Well, the coolant is finally starting to slow down, so I'm just gonna screw this back down and snug it up. And look at all this that came out of it. That's only after maybe 1 hour of runtime. Not good at all. We've got something bad going on in here. Now I want to crack this lower drain cock and get some oil out and see how the oil actually looks, if it's milky or if it's still okay. Well, the oil still looks okay. It hasn't completely mixed with the coolant yet. So we're going to move on from the coolant issue for now and focus on the valve train and the running issue. Granted, it's running pretty darn good on these Autolite 3116s, but as we saw yesterday, 3 and 4 have different running conditions than 1 and 2. 3 and 4 tend to be dirty and 1 and 2 tend to be clean. Now 1 and 2 being clean could actually mean that we're getting coolant into the combustion chambers on 1 and 2, and that's why they're clean. Or 1 and 2 are normal and 3 and 4 are dirty because something is wrong with the valves. But let's try to find out. I've already got the engine on top dead center, the firing position on number 1. I did that by rotating the fan blade with my hand, feeling for compression in the spark plug hole, watching until both rocker arms get into the neutral position, and also lining up the first notch right there with the pointer. And then the fourth way to confirm it is to just look at the rotor and make sure it's pointing towards the number 1 position on the distributor cap, and it is. So that's 4 ways to figure out that we're on number 1 to start with, which is very important. So I'm going to fix the camera up and then we'll see what we got for valve lash. Those feel great. I'm going to move on to the rest in firing order. So the next we're going to do is number 3, then 4, then 2. I'm going to do those off camera and I'll bring you right back. Well, I got them all done and they were all way too tight. Interesting, huh? And tight valves can definitely contribute to a poor running engine. And if they're like that for any length of time, they can actually start to damage components like the valve seats and the valves. So who knows how long the engine has been like this, and we obviously can't tell the condition of the valves or the valve seats right now. So let's start it up, see how it runs, and then I want to check all 4 spark plugs again to see if there's any change to the condition of the plugs. And I'm going to let it run for a while this time, try to get it up to operating temperature before we check the plugs. Well, I ran it for 20 minutes or so, maybe a little longer actually. I was in the shop cleaning up some tools. And it's kind of back to running the way it was before we put the Autolite 3116s in it. You know, it's not horrible, but it still is missing every once in a while, and it shouldn't be doing that. Let's pull these spark plugs and see if there's any change to their condition. Well, as you can see, are back to the way they were before. 1 and 2 are clean, and 3 and 4 are sooty. So we're kind of back to square one with this. Let me go get my endoscope camera and we'll take a look in each cylinder just to see if anything obvious pops up. Well, I'm sorry I couldn't get a good shot with the camera of the inside of the cylinders for you. The endoscope camera is actually pretty good, but it's not 4K. And then between the glare and the shadows out here, I just couldn't get anything that looked good. And I didn't find anything glaring and obvious. The only thing I found in there was that the motor looks old. There's a lot of carbon buildup on the valves. I saw some vertical streaking, maybe vertical scoring on the inside of the cylinders. Let's see, 1, 3, 4, and definite ring ridges. But I didn't see any liquid or anything like that. So I was able to eliminate many things in this video. So we made progress that way. We also made progress in the sense that we're not hearing that noise anymore. That intermittent knock or clank or whatever you want to call it, that went away when we put the Autolite 3116 spark plugs in it. So my only assumption there is that the motor didn't really like those Champion D21s, and it ran much better on the 3116s. Anyway, I don't hear the noise anymore. It's gone. So I guess that's a good thing, but this is really kind of a tough one to figure out. I don't think it's the weights inside the governor. I remember you had a bunch of comments regarding that. The motor is running the same at all RPMs, but still it shouldn't have that occasional pop and miss. It's doing that too often to be considered, you know, normal. I also don't think that it has anything to do with the rocker arm shaft or the bushings. We confirmed that the valves were not way too loose and we weren't getting a bunch of rocker noise there. In fact, they were way too tight. But we got those set back to where they belong. I did check the ignition coil, and the ignition coil is good. That's one thing that I didn't mention in the previous video with the ignition system, but the ignition system all seems to be good. But the tractor ain't running right, and we're getting way too much coolant in the oil. We shouldn't be getting any coolant in the oil, but there's quite a lot. You saw how much came out of it this morning. So it is possible that the entire problem with everything could just be a head gasket. If it's not a head gasket, then we're in trouble. Now, here's something I just noticed. You can see this dirt pattern. This is where the head meets the block, along this line right here. And there's dirt built up here, which usually indicates that there's some kind of a moisture coming from somewhere that attracts dirt. So I wonder if we're having some leakage from the head gasket there on the outside. See, same back here. Now if we come around to the other side, I can actually see wetness. I hope that you can see that on the camera. But right there, that is not something that splashed up there or got on there from the outside. That's coming from inside. So it's all wet right there, and then a little bit wet right there, and then a lot wet right here. That's all coming from that gasket, I think. One of the comments in the last video said that these Farmall M heads are sometimes prone to cracking. So that's been in the back of my mind. But now that I'm seeing this wetness up here, I'm starting to feel a little bit more hopeful. Well, you guys know me well enough by now. What I lack in mechanical ability, I make up for in being thorough. So I'd wipe this down with a paper towel so it's dry, and they're going to run the engine again and see if we get some more moisture out of there, and that will really be telling. Well, I ran it for about 15 minutes, and It's a slow leak, but there's definitely moisture coming out of the gasket right there. I don't know, I guess that makes me feel a little bit better. Yeah, we're just getting a little bit of moisture starting to weep from there too. Might be an indication that we have a bad head gasket. And that would be the best thing we can hope for at this point. So that's what we'll do in the next video. We'll put a new head gasket on it, put everything back together, and see if that doesn't fix all of our issues. If you guys have not subscribed to the channel yet, please consider doing that. I've got a lot of projects planned for this year, and I hope you guys will continue to tune in. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.